Okay, let's talk about one of the cars that everyone loves to hate. But this is actually called Lilac Lilly, and this Marina is mine. But I'll tell you a bit more about that in a minute. So the Morris Marina was a car built by British Leyland, which everybody kind of knows about for all the wrong reasons. British Leyland had a very bad habit of testing their cars on the general public. So they would make a car, and instead of going for hours and hours and hours of testing, what they would do is they would simply just release it. So, if you're unlucky enough to buy one of the first generations of the British Leyland cars, when they first came out, they came with loads of problems. And nothing really represented this much more than the Marina, the Allegro and the Maxi. All three cars were, well, the Allegro and the Maxi were innovative. This wasn't. This was just the bread and butter car. This was your family sedan in the 60s. Well, it was meant to come out in the 60s. It came out in 72, if I remember right. I think there were some early cars in 71, but it was 72 was the official launch date. And they came out to a fanfare of nothing, really. I mean, they weren't an especially great looking car. Time has been kind. Roy Hayes designed this, was the guy who designed the Mark II Cortina, which everyone knows and loves and thinks is a fantastic car. Well, with this, by the time he'd started designing this, Ford were already miles ahead. They'd gone for a longer, leaner, more Coke bottle shape with the Mark III. So this car came out was a smaller version of what they expected the public to drive through the 70s. But actually, a lot of the cars in the 70s actually grew quite big. The Cortina, the Granada, the Vauxhall Victor was quite big, with the FE. But this was released, and it was actually quite a small car. But it was economical. That was a good start. It came with a 1275 or an 1800cc in Britain anyway. And then, they released it, and they didn't really do a lot of work to the brakes and handling, and that was one of its major faults. Let me show you around a bit inside it. So this is quite kind of the top of the range. This is the Super Deluxe. So this came with the radio, 3 very sporty gauges, which I actually quite like. This one's only done 77,000 miles from new. Comes with if it's not the original stereo, it's quite close to it, and a rather unusual dash, but you always know you're in a Marina instantaneously. I mean, lots of us, this one's got a really, really attractive dark red interior too. This car is, it's almost mint condition. It's not perfect, but it's really, really good. It's like, it's almost, apart from the carpet's been a little thread worn because they're, older. That's it. Like, even in New Zealand, this car is, genuinely spectacular. Every single thing on it is original. I did replace a tiny bit of fabric in the seats because it had cracked, but this car was stored inside its entire life, and it'll be start on the button. Now look, I've actually got my own private test track today, so I'm going to give you a little bit of drive. So here's the first thing. Yeah, Marinas rattle, okay? It's a thing. There's always something here that rattles. This will probably be that. There we go. I can maybe tighten it down a little bit more to quite that. It's an infuriating thing, but all Marinas have got a rattle or a squeak or a thing somewhere you have to deal with. They've got quite an irritating set of headlight switches that are renowned to just stop headlighting, but that's a Lucas thing. So here we go, we'll take it for a spin, okay? So if you haven't been in a Marina before, here we go. Now, throttle response is rather good. This is the 1.8. Gearing isn't particularly high, so don't expect to do massive motorway speeds on it. And it drives and it goes okay. It drives exactly what you would like to think most 70s family sedans drive like, which is generally okay. This is second gear up to this, right? This is how the gearing is really on these. As you get a bit quicker, that you could blindfold me and I could tell you straight away I'm in a marina. That sound is unmistakable. Nothing else sounds quite like one. You know, it's this familiar, slightly farty sound from the exhaust that sounds a bit like an MGB if you close your eyes. And that gearbox wipe. Now the gearbox is built from Triumph and Morris parts, which shouldn't particularly surprise you. They aren't the most robust thing in the world. So the reason that these didn't really take off, I mean, they had a little rally career and so on, but they weren't really suited to it, let's put it that way. But they handle fine. I mean, they go okay. This is, I think, a 74, if I remember right off the top of my mind. Might even be a 75. I had no intention of ever selling this car ever, because I had, when I was in college, I had plenty of marinas. Now, if you had 50 quid in the UK back in the sort of 90s and you wanted a cheap car, well, your cheap car was likely to be something British Leyland, because Cortina's Escorts and so on was quite expensive. Marinas, British Leyland weren't. You could turn up, most people would sell you them. They were usually owned by grandpas and people, so they were available easily, cheaply. Nobody wanted them, especially if it was a weird colour. And believe me, did they make some weird colours. I'd love to do some editing at this point in time, but unfortunately I'm back in New Zealand, so no editing for you guys. You're just going to get the full video as usual. Hope I don't bore you. We'll try and keep this as short and sweet as possible. Like I said, pull along in third gear. This is great. Marinas make fantastic classic cars. As a second car to run around in and just have some fun with, they are fantastic. The parts are pretty available. Nothing really goes wrong. They don't have any weak spots. Look at this. The acceleration is actually pretty brisk, though your gear change is less so, and your brakes definitely less so. They're okay. The brakes are fine. They do what you expect them to do. The brakes in this one have been rebuilt, which is a nice thing. Last year, I think we'll probably stay down here and I'll show you around the rest of the car. Out of the wind, right? So you don't have to listen to the horrible drone. This one idles away quite happily, but this is a low mileage beauty. Look at the door panels. Like, it really is a lovely car. Let's show you under the bonnet. So, as a practical little classic, these are great. Forget your ideas about lowering them, doing rally sports in them. That's not really what they're good for. Very standard B series, all used to this. Nice easy plugs and points. You know, they eat fuel pumps unless you've got an electric pump in them. The old ones are getting pretty old now. You might find a couple of good quality replacements, you probably won't. This girl, she is very, very original. Interior, reasonably spacious, reasonably comfortable. I love this thing in lilac. Just a great colour, really is. Of course, these were made famous by Top Gear. I'll show you the back end. These were made famous by Top Gear, dropping pianos on them. Now, that was because they sort of hated marinas, but really is because the Marina Owners Club, look at that, very decent sized boot. Deep, long, great. Spare wheel and everything checked in there, nice and easy. Brilliant. Now, Top Gear really fell out with the Marina Club, and they thought it was so funny, that's why they always picked on marinas. Because really, and sorry to Allegro owners, Allegros are worse cars, so are Princesses, so are Maxis. Now, don't see me harsh on it, but the hydrogas cars are really tricky to repair the suspensions on now. They weren't too bad when they were new, but they got a lot worse. The Princess suffered from really heavy steering, and the Maxi had the weirdest gear change you've ever been known to drive in a car. I mean, basically, you went through different time zones going through it. Man, this car's a good looking car. Why am I selling it? What am I doing? You went through different time zones in it. And that was fundamentally his biggest problem. It just was kind of a bad car. Drive it nice and easily. I suppose just for a scruffier look at this point in time, then it's no good. The Max had a cable gear change. Now the cable gear change needed constant adjustment. So the very first Maxis, which came out in 68 to 70, I think, the gear change was terrible, right? The Marina gear change is nothing to write home about, I can tell you that either. There's a pretty long sway between it, and as it gets worn, it gets worse. The gearbox wears out fairly quickly, so it's whiny, and there's, you know, parts are not as easy to come by as they used to be. But it's still not bad. If you bought this as a classic car, you would drive around it every day. You wouldn't be bothered by any servicing parts, and you would probably enjoy driving it. Also, they're fairly cheap, especially for what they are. They're way cheaper than a Cortina or Escort, and they're sort of a mid-size between the pair, really. They just sort of fit right in the middle of that group. I'm just going to drive this up to another place, and I might show you around a bit more of it. Hang on. Back for a bit more driving. There was a guy coming past me with a lawnmower, so easier to drive off than do anything else. So seats are comfortable. There's plenty of space in here. I'm a pretty big guy. I'm 6 foot odd, pretty heavy. Seats are comfortable and squishy. So is all the suspension. You know, you're not going to hot rod it around corners, but on the flip side, you won't. It doesn't do anything unexpected, apart from understeer, which it does. So when the first Marinas came out, this was the very early cars. They had very upright wheels on the front, very, very upright, and that is not good for going around corners. So what they used to do is knock around corners was the basic gist of it. You'd drive it, and it would just, when you come into a corner in the wet, thin tyres, 155s, 13s, 70s, decent sized side walls on them, they would just understeer, and then they would oversteer. The 1300 was less for oversteering than the 1800, but also, of course, there was the big 6, the 262 Aussie 6. Now, very few people have driven those, but they did have a redesigned front suspension, and they weren't as bad as you might expect. However, they were a bit, I'm going to say lethal, to be honest, to drive. They had a 3-speed manual on them, and they had plenty of power, but no real cornering aspect on them. You know, they just, same problems, understeer, always understeer. The coupes, especially the 1275s, not that the coupe was any really different from the car, because it was like based on the same floor plan, same width, same doors, even as the sedan. They were a little bit better handling, really, so a bit better for a car. This one's got real stock, so it's got all the really stock components on it, which unfortunately means it doesn't handle that well. By the Marina 2, and this was a particularly BL thing, by the Marina 2 they would always improve the cars. So these end up with like 175 tyres, or maybe 185s at the end. Roll bars, which was really, really handy, like anti-roll bars in the front and the rear. And it made a massive difference to the cars. I mean, they were just a lot better. But of course, the other thing with Marinas is just the build quality. Panel gaps and so on were really kind of a bit of a joke in the 70s. It was the Wild West when you bought cars. Like Morrison British Lane would basically send you out a car and go, there you go, and then you would send it back to be repaired by them, because they would have issues like the Allegros, the rear windscreens would explode, the front wheels would drop off, the automatic gearbox was, well, how do we put this? Not automatic and frequently not working. The Maxis, like I said, it was the gear change was the big problem. The Princesses just had terrible build quality. The first ones were awful. My uncle bought one brand spanking new in 1977. He took it home. First way on the way home, he lost all his hubcaps because they weren't put on properly. But he went back, put the hubcaps in the boot. They put them back on for him. Then he took it back home, and they found out the only door handle that was screwed on was the driver's door handle. All the other ones were loose. If you see this door handle, you'll recognise that. They put that into everything they could possibly fit, even Lotuses, lots of kit cars. Everybody used this handle. TR7s. Ugh. Yeah, well, anyway, that's British Leyland. British Leyland, unfortunately, were plagued by strikes. They had workers that didn't really want to work on stuff. They had the management that didn't develop cars. You know, hard life. This old girl was birthed into a troubled household, and unfortunately it told. But this car ran from 1970, I'm going to say it was like 71 actually, from 71 until 1980, 81 maybe, I think was the last of the Itals. Maybe longer. The Ital was basically a jumped up marina. Actually, it's a lot better if you jump in a Ital. Better gearing, better rust protection, and a lot more sorted car to drive, actually. The Ital was really good, but actually ugly. Can't forgive it styling. Sorry, Itals. I can forgive it styling, but I like marinas, so what can you say? Anyway, if you update the marina a little bit, look after it tidily, it's a really good classic car. Compared to a 50s car, it's amazingly good to drive. You can just jump in it and drive it. You want to go to the shops, take your kids out, great. Want to rallycross it, like I said, probably no. But the prices are very sensible. The cars are really good. Watch out for rust. Really watch out for rust. Those front guards are welded on as well, which is a problem. Because when it comes to taking them off, you've got to unpick them, which means spares are very hard to find. You get a little bit of rust in the doors. In fact, you get a little bit of rust everywhere on a marina if you're not careful. So check them thoroughly before you buy them. But honestly, I love this little thing. I've had a really good time with it. I've had it for years. It's never let me down. It's done every film shoot absolutely flawlessly. And I like it. It's been good. So it's going to a really good home to a friend of mine, Andreas, who's going to pick it up over the weekend. And I hope he has as much fun as it with me. But I thought you'd like to see it because lilac Lilly's a weird colour. Probably New Zealand only, I would guess. And I would guess it's New Zealand built. Yeah, I was right. It was a 74, so I was just double checking there. But it's all original, like everything's original. This car's done 77,000 miles. It was kept inside its entire life. Came from Marlborough. Some kid bought it, was going to put big wheels on it and so on, and then drove it and scared itself to death. Like, because obviously they don't do sporty stuff. Sporty marinas are not really sporty. They don't drive like an Escort. If you get a chance to drive one, you'll see what I mean. It's like a boat. But if you're in your sort of 40s or 30s, you'll probably enjoy it and it'll be a lot of fun. So actually, tough mechanicals, reasonably straightforward, easy to fix, parts availability is good. There's a good club support as well with Morris Marina Owners Club, which are really nice people. Unless you're Jeremy Clarkson, in which case they absolutely hate your guts. But they could have picked a lot worse car to be the worst car on Top Gear. And they even sold these in the States and Canada, but if you've got one up there, I have no idea why you bought it. Like, really, like, honestly, they are not suitable for America. Like, they just really aren't. They're maybe a city car, but like compared to a Chevy or something, you would be horrified on the open road on this. Everybody else, well, yep. I hope you've got one. Hope you enjoy one. Write down in the comments what you think of them. If you want me to do something else next, P76. It's meant to be way worse, but I'm going to do something with that when I come back, because of course I had a couple of issues, been like through 2 different countries at the moment because of some family problems. Of course, I've got the yard to sort out as well. Plenty of things to do, but anyway, I'll catch up with you shortly. Sorry I've been a bit slow on my YouTube videos recently because, well, like I said, I've had to be back and forth the UK, so I haven't really had time to do things on Facebook and YouTube. So what I will do is I'll try and concentrate a bit more this year, and I've got a few things that I need to edit and send out for everyone. But thanks so much for all your patience, and thanks for watching and subscribing, and hope you enjoy the videos as much as I enjoy doing them. Thanks, bye.